83% of storage used. If you run out, you can't create, edit, and upload files. Get 30 gigabytes for 5,000 Vietnamese dongs for 3 months, 19,000 Vietnamese dongs. 100%, sir. Don't drink that. Sofia Bellini's small hand closed around Alessandro Moretti's sleeve as his crystal glass hovered above the desk, and the entire room froze. The Mafia boss stared at the cup she was pointing at while Victoria Romano stood beside him with a calm smile that suddenly looked too carefully controlled. "You're not tired, sir," the maid's little girl whispered. "You're drugged." 3 hours earlier, the Moretti mansion had been moving like any other afternoon of power and routine. The private office on the second floor smelled of leather, old wood, and the faint smoke from Alessandro's untouched cigar. Outside the tall windows, security guards watched the gates, while inside, lawyers reviewed documents connected to a major port expansion deal. Everything in Alessandro Moretti's world had a place. Every person had a role. Every mistake had a consequence. At 48, he had built an empire where fear was easier to create than trust. But lately, something had been wrong. Not obvious enough for anyone else to question. Just small cracks. A forgotten meeting. A moment when he reached for a name and found nothing there. A sudden wave of anger over things that normally would not bother him. His private doctor called it stress. His assistant called it exhaustion. Victoria called it a sign that he needed to slow down. Sofia Bellini called it something else. She was only 9 years old, the daughter of Elena Bellini, one of the housekeepers who worked quietly inside the Moretti mansion. Sofia was not supposed to enter Alessandro's office. She knew that. Children stayed away from rooms where important people made important decisions. But every afternoon, while helping her mother carry folded towels and supplies through the hallway, she noticed the same thing. The same black crystal glass with the gold rim. The same bottle of water. The same moment when Alessandro drank from it and changed. She did not understand business. She did not understand the dangerous world around the Moretti family. But she understood patterns. And children who notice patterns sometimes see what adults choose to ignore. That afternoon, Sofia stopped near the doorway when she saw the glass placed on Alessandro's desk. Something was different. The glass was turned the other way. The small scratch near the gold rim was facing the window instead of the chair. She looked closer, remembering the way she had seen her mother polish it many times. "Sofia," Elena called softly from the hallway. "You should come back." Sofia almost listened, almost walked away. Then Alessandro reached for the glass. Her eyes moved from the cup to his hand. She saw the same slight tremor she had seen before. She saw the tired expression everyone had accepted as normal. She saw a man surrounded by guards, lawyers, and people who claimed loyalty. Yet no one was watching the one thing he consumed every day. "Sir," she said quietly. Alessandro looked up. His expression hardened. "Why are you in here?" Sofia stepped closer, but only one step. She did not touch the desk. She did not accuse anyone. She simply pointed. "That glass." Victoria entered moments later, her heels clicking against the floor. Her smile appeared immediately. "Alessandro, she's just a child." I'm sure she misunderstood something. It was the kind of sentence meant to end a conversation before it began. Alessandro looked at Victoria, then back at Sofia. The little girl was not angry. She was not trying to impress him. She looked worried. That was what bothered him. Because fear was something he understood. And Sofia did not look afraid of him. She looked afraid for him. Alessandro slowly lowered the glass onto the desk. "Tell me why," he said. Sofia opened her small notebook with careful hands. She turned to a page filled with dates and simple observations written in a child's handwriting. She pointed to the latest line, and Alessandro leaned closer. It was only one sentence. "Tuesday. After the afternoon drink, Mr. Moretti forgot his father's watch was on his wrist." Alessandro Moretti stared at the sentence written in Sofia Bellini's small notebook. The handwriting was uneven, the letters slightly too large, the way a 9-year-old wrote when she wanted to make sure. Every word was clear. "Tuesday. After the afternoon drink, Mr. Moretti forgot his father's watch was on his wrist." For a few seconds, the room felt smaller. Not because of the child standing in front of him. Because of the memory behind those words. The gold watch on his wrist had belonged to his father. Alessandro had worn it every day for almost 20 years. He had never forgotten it. Not once. Victoria Romano gave a quiet laugh, the kind of laugh people used when they wanted others to believe something was ridiculous. "Alessandro, please," she said softly. "You're letting a child's imagination create fear where there is none." Her voice was gentle. Her expression was perfect. Almost too perfect. Alessandro noticed that before he noticed anything else. He had survived decades in a world where people lied with their mouths and told the truth with their eyes. Sofia looked down at the notebook. "I'm not trying to scare anyone," she said. "I just wrote what happened." Victoria stepped closer. "Sweetheart, sometimes when we are young, we notice things but we don't understand them." Sofia looked at her for a moment. "I know." Her answer was quiet. "That's why I wrote them down instead of guessing." The room went silent again. Elena Bellini appeared at the doorway, immediately worried when she saw her daughter standing inside Alessandro's office. "Sofia," she whispered. "Come here, please." Sofia closed the notebook and walked toward her mother. But before leaving, she looked back at Alessandro. "I'm sorry, sir. I shouldn't have come in." Alessandro studied her carefully. She was apologizing for entering his office, not for what she said. That difference stayed with him. After Elena and Sofia left, Victoria moved toward the desk and reached for the glass. "I'll have someone replace it," she said. Alessandro's eyes followed her hand. "Why?" Victoria paused. "Only for a moment. Because if it makes you uncomfortable, there's no reason to keep it." Alessandro leaned back in his chair. "I didn't say it made me uncomfortable." Another small silence. Victoria smiled again. "You're tired, Alessandro. You've been under pressure for months." It sounded like concern. It also sounded rehearsed. After she left, Alessandro remained alone in the office. He did not call security. He did not accuse anyone. He simply looked at the glass. Then he looked at the clock. Then he looked at the chair where Sofia had been standing. He picked up his phone and sent one message to his assistant. "Do not mention this conversation. Check the office access records for today." 5 minutes later, his assistant replied, "There is something unusual." Alessandro opened the message. The office access log showed that someone had entered the room 12 minutes before his scheduled arrival. A staff member's card had opened the door. Not Elena's. Not his assistant's. A household access card. Alessandro looked at the name attached to the entry. Then he looked toward the hallway outside his office. The house continued moving normally. Servants walked quietly. Guards stood at their posts. The same people who had protected him for years continued their routines as if nothing had changed. But now Alessandro was paying attention. Later that evening, Sofia sat at the kitchen table beside her mother, helping fold clean towels. Elena asked why she had gone into the office. Sofia kept folding the fabric carefully. "Because nobody else was looking," she said. Elena stopped. "Sofia, some people are dangerous. You cannot always fix things by telling the truth." Sofia lowered her eyes. "I know, Mom." Then she touched the small notebook. "But if I don't tell the truth, who will?" Before Elena could answer, Alessandro appeared in the kitchen doorway. Neither of them heard him arrive. He looked at Sofia's notebook. "Show me the page before Tuesday." Sofia hesitated. Then she turned the notebook around. There were more dates, more small observations, more moments everyone else had ignored. Alessandro read silently until he reached one line that made his expression change. Friday. The person who brought the water was wearing a different perfume than usual. He looked up slowly, because that meant Sofia had not only noticed what was in the glass. She had noticed who was close enough to put it there. Alessandro Moretti looked again at the sentence written in Sofia Bellini's notebook. Friday. The person who brought the water was wearing a different perfume than usual. He had read thousands of reports in his life. Financial reports, security reports, intelligence files. But a child's handwriting on a small notebook had just pointed him toward a detail that every professional around him had missed. He closed the notebook slowly. "You noticed a smell?" he asked. Sophia nodded from the kitchen chair, keeping her hands folded in her lap. "Not just a smell, sir. A different one." Alessandro studied her. "Explain." Sophia looked at her mother before answering. Elena Bellini gave a small worried shake of her head, afraid her daughter had already said too much. But Sophia continued carefully. "The woman who usually brings your water smells like lavender soap. The person on Friday smelled like roses." The kitchen became quiet. It was a simple observation, almost too simple. That was exactly why it bothered Alessandro. A professional spy would look for complicated secrets. Sophia had noticed something because she knew what normal looked like. Alessandro stood and walked toward the hallway. He did not ask Sophia to follow him. He did not tell her she was right. He simply walked back to his office with his phone in his hand. His assistant had already sent the access records. One name appeared again. A temporary household access card. Alessandro stared at the screen. The card belonged to a staff member who had worked in the mansion for 3 years. Someone trusted enough to move freely through the house. Someone invisible enough that nobody paid attention. He called his assistant. "Send me the security footage from Friday afternoon." A pause. Then the answer came. "Sir, there is a problem." Alessandro's expression changed slightly. "What problem?" "The camera covering the second-floor hallway is missing 7 minutes of footage." Alessandro said nothing. 7 minutes. The exact kind of gap that looked accidental to people who wanted to believe everything was normal. He walked back into his office. The black crystal glass was still there, untouched. The gold rim caught the afternoon light. Victoria entered a few moments later carrying a folder. She looked elegant, calm, and completely composed. "You disappeared," she said with a soft smile. "I was worried." Alessandro looked at her hands. "Were you?" Victoria stopped for half a second. Tiny pause. Almost impossible to notice. Almost. "Of course," she answered. She placed the folder on the desk. "Your doctor thinks you should rest more. You have been pushing yourself too hard." Alessandro opened the folder. Inside were medical notes from his private physician. The same explanation. Stress, exhaustion, age, normal causes. He turned one page, then another. "Interesting," he said. Victoria looked at him. "What is?" "Nothing." But he noticed something. The newest report had a date printed at the top. The date was correct. The time was not. The report said his doctor examined him at 3 p.m. Alessandro remembered that day clearly. At 3 p.m., he had been in a meeting downstairs with 3 attorneys. Nobody had examined him. Victoria watched his face carefully. "Alessandro?" she asked. He closed the folder. "Just thinking." She smiled again, but this time the smile did not reach her eyes. Later that night, Sophia sat at the kitchen table writing in her notebook. Alessandro stood nearby. "Do you always write everything down?" he asked. Sophia nodded. "Only things that change." He looked at the pages. Dates, times, small details. Nothing dramatic. Nothing exaggerated. Just observations. "Why didn't you tell someone sooner?" Alessandro asked. Sophia lowered her pencil. "I tried." Her voice became quieter. "But everyone said you were just busy, or angry, or tired." Alessandro looked away for a moment, because that answer hurt more than he expected. Not because she blamed anyone, because she was right. Before leaving, Sophia pointed to the newest page. "There is one more thing." Alessandro looked down. "What?" Sophia hesitated, then turned the notebook toward him. Under Friday's entry, she had drawn a small circle around one detail. The person who brought the water was wearing the same perfume as the woman who signed the medicine delivery receipt. Alessandro stared at the circle. Then slowly, he reached for his phone and searched the delivery records. The receipt showed a signature he recognized, but not from the person everyone thought had ordered the medicine. Alessandro Moretti stared at the signature on the medicine delivery receipt. It was not a name he expected to see. It was not the doctor's assistant. It was not a pharmacy employee. It was Victoria Romano's personal authorization code. For several seconds, he did not move. The room around him remained quiet except for the soft ticking of the clock above the fireplace. Sofia Bellini stood nearby, holding her small notebook against her chest. Unaware that a single line she wrote had just opened a door Alessandro had spent years keeping locked. "Where did you find this?" he asked. Sofia pointed toward the kitchen counter. The paper was under the delivery box. "My mom was going to throw it away because she thought it was trash." Alessandro looked at Elena. She immediately lowered her eyes. "I didn't think it was important, sir." That sentence stayed with him. Not important. In his world, people were paid millions to notice details. Yet, the person who noticed the most was someone everyone overlooked. The next morning, Alessandro decided to test what he had seen. Not with accusations. Not with anger. With information. He called a private meeting in his study with his assistant, his consigliere, and his attorney. Victoria was there too, sitting gracefully across from him, dressed in a cream-colored suit, holding a cup of coffee like she belonged in every room she entered. Sofia was not invited. Elena was not invited. The adults talked over documents and security procedures. "We need to be careful," the attorney said. "A child's observations cannot replace professional evidence." Alessandro nodded. "Agreed." He looked toward the security chief. "That is why we will check the footage." Victoria's expression did not change. "Of course," she said calmly. "That is the reasonable thing to do." The security chief pulled up the hallway cameras from Friday afternoon. The footage played normally. Staff members walked through the corridor. A housekeeper carried towels. A delivery worker left a package. Everything looked ordinary. Then the screen reached the moment before Alessandro's water was delivered. The image froze. 7 missing minutes. Exactly as the access log had shown. The room became quieter. Victoria leaned forward slightly. "That proves nothing," she said. "Old security systems fail. We have hundreds of cameras." Her voice was calm, logical. She was not panicking. That was what made Alessandro watch her more closely. People who were innocent wanted answers. People who were controlling a situation wanted explanations. "Restore the missing section," Alessandro ordered. The technician hesitated. "Sir." The file was overwritten. Before anyone could respond, a small voice came from the doorway. "It wasn't 7 minutes." Everyone turned. Sofia stood there with Elena behind her. Elena looked embarrassed. "I'm sorry, sir." She followed me. A security officer stepped forward. "Miss Sofia cannot interrupt private meetings." The words were polite. The tone was not. Sofia looked down briefly, then held up her notebook. "I know."
I'm sorry.
She looked at Alessandro. But the hallway bell rang twice. The security chief frowned. "What bell?" Sofia pointed toward the monitor. "The old service bell near the second floor. It makes a sound when someone opens the side door." Alessandro looked at the footage again. Nobody else had noticed. Because nobody was listening for something they considered unimportant. "Play the audio," he said. The technician enhanced the recording. Static filled the room. Then a faint sound appeared. A bell. One ring. Then another. The timestamp showed something different. The missing footage did not begin when the camera failed. It began 30 seconds after someone entered the hallway. Alessandro looked at the access log again. The household card had opened the door at 2:41 p.m. The camera disappeared at 2:41 p.m. But the bell rang at 2:40 p.m. Victoria's fingers tightened slightly around her coffee cup. Just slightly. Enough for Alessandro to notice. "Interesting," he said quietly. "Victoria's Maid. What is?" Alessandro looked back at the screen. Nothing yet. She believed she had controlled the room. She believed the conversation had returned to normal. But when the technician enlarged the final frame before the blackout, one tiny detail appeared on the edge of the image. A reflection in the glass cabinet. A hand placing the water glass on Alessandro's desk. And on that hand was a ring that did not belong to the person listed on the access record. The reflection in the glass cabinet remained frozen on the screen. A hand, a ring, a detail so small that almost anyone else would have ignored it. But Alessandro Moretti had built his life on noticing the things other people missed. "Zoom in," he said quietly. The technician enlarged the image, but the reflection became blurred. The ring was visible for only a moment before the angle disappeared. Victoria leaned back in her chair. "Alessandro, this is becoming excessive," she said calmly. "A reflection and a child's notes are not proof of anything." Her words were reasonable, almost comforting. That was exactly why they were dangerous. Alessandro did not answer. He looked at the screen one more time, then closed the file. "Everyone leaves," he said. The room emptied slowly. Victoria left last, offering him a concerned expression before walking away. The second the door closed, Alessandro called his attorney. "I want every copy of that footage secured. Original files only. No edits. No transfers." His attorney understood immediately. "You think someone inside the house is manipulating evidence?" Alessandro looked toward the black crystal glass sitting on his desk. "I think someone believes I am not paying attention." The investigation moved quietly. "No accusations. No threats. Just records, timestamps, and questions." The security team created copies of the damaged footage. The legal team reviewed the access logs. The doctor's reports were compared against appointment schedules. But one thing continued bothering Alessandro. The ring. He had seen it before. He just could not remember where. That evening, Sophia sat at the kitchen table with her notebook open. Elena was preparing dinner while quietly watching her daughter. Alessandro entered without his usual guards. Sophia immediately closed the notebook. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked. He paused. The question surprised him. Not because of the words, because of the fear behind them. "No," he said. "Why would you think that?" Sophia looked down. "Because people get upset when I notice things." Alessandro stood there silently for a moment. In his world, people fought for power. They lied for money. They destroyed each other for control. But a child had learned that telling the truth could also make people uncomfortable. "What else did you notice?" he asked. Sophia hesitated, then reached into her small backpack. She pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was not a report. It was a delivery receipt. The paper was slightly wrinkled, as if it had been carried around for days. "I kept this because the time was wrong," she said. Alessandro took it carefully. The receipt showed a medicine delivery to the mansion. The delivery time was listed as 4:15 p.m., but Sophia had written something beside it in pencil. 3:52 p.m. "Why did you write that?" Alessandro asked. Sophia pointed toward the corner of the page. "Because I heard the delivery truck." Alessandro looked at her. "You heard it?" Sophia nodded. "The truck always makes a loud sound when it turns near the gate. I heard it before my mother called me for dinner." Alessandro checked the timestamp again. The difference was more than 20 minutes. Small, easy to ignore. But now there were too many small things. The missing camera footage. The wrong time on the medical record. The medicine receipt. The changed perfume. The glass. He placed the receipt inside a clear evidence folder. Then he photographed every side of it with his phone. Sophia watched carefully. "Are you angry?" she asked. Alessandro looked at the receipt. "No," he sealed the folder. "I am making sure nobody can say it never existed." For the first time, Sophia saw something different in him. Not anger, control. He was no longer reacting. He was building something. A case. Before leaving the kitchen, Alessandro stopped and looked at the receipt one more time. The delivery company name was printed at the top. Under it was the authorization signature. He had seen that signature before. Not on medicine paperwork. Not in the doctor's office. On documents Victoria had personally approved. He returned to his office, opened the previous files, and placed the two signatures side by side. They matched. But the person who supposedly ordered the medicine was not the person listed on the delivery record. Alessandro stared at the names in silence. Then he noticed one more thing. The delivery authorization had been approved using his own household account. Alessandro Moretti stared at the two signatures placed side by side on his desk. One belonged to the medicine authorization form. The other belonged to a document Victoria Romano had personally approved months earlier. The names were different. The handwriting was not. For the first time in days, Alessandro felt something colder than suspicion. He felt certainty beginning to form. Someone had not simply made a mistake. Someone had built a system around a lie. He closed the file and locked it inside the drawer beneath his desk. No one in the mansion knew what he had found. Not Victoria. Not the doctor. Not even the people who had worked beside him for years. The next morning, Alessandro met privately with his attorney.
No guards.
No raised voices.
No dramatic accusations.
Just a closed office, a stack of documents, and a simple order. Trace every payment connected to my medical care from the last 6 months. His attorney looked through the files. You believe this goes beyond the medicine? Alessandro looked out the window at the mansion grounds. I believe someone wanted me to question myself before anyone questioned them. The financial review began quietly. The results came back hours later. The medicine deliveries were paid through a company that appeared normal on paper. A wellness consulting company. A harmless name. A clean record. But when the ownership records were opened, the trail ended at a holding company connected to Victoria's private accounts. Alessandro did not react. He simply wrote one word on the page. Why? Because money was not the real goal. If Victoria wanted only his wealth, there were easier ways. She was not trying to steal a fortune. She was trying to remove the man who controlled it. That afternoon, the mansion felt different. The same marble floors, the same silent staff, the same portraits hanging on the walls. But Alessandro no longer saw a home. He saw a place where someone had been moving pieces around him while he was looking somewhere else. In the kitchen, Sofia sat beside Elena while rain tapped softly against the window. The washing machine hummed in the background. A small television played quietly from the next room. For a brief moment, the mansion felt less like a fortress and more like a normal home. Sofia folded a towel and looked at her mother. Do you think Mr. Moretti is angry at me? Elena stopped. Why would you think that? Sofia shrugged slightly. Because people with power don't like when someone tells them something they don't want to hear. Elena touched her daughter's hand. You were trying to help. Sofia looked down at the towel. I just didn't want him to disappear. Alessandro heard those words from the doorway. He had not intended to listen, but he stayed still. Disappear. That was the exact word. Not die. Not lose money. Disappear. The same thing Victoria's hidden plan would create if Alex became too weak to lead. Later that evening, Alessandro reviewed the old contracts connected to his estate. One document caught his attention. It was a power authorization agreement prepared months earlier. A document that would allow someone to make decisions if Alessandro became medically unable to perform his duties. The signature page was clean. The legal language was perfect. Everything looked legitimate. Except for one detail. The witness signature had been added 2 days after the document was supposedly completed. Alessandro checked the records again. The witness was his private doctor. The same doctor who had been reporting his decline. The same doctor who claimed nothing unusual was happening. Alessandro leaned back in his chair, staring at the contract. He remembered the first time Victoria brought the doctor into his life. She had said she found someone trustworthy. Someone who would protect him. For years, Alessandro had believed that was an act of love. Now he understood something much harder. The people closest to him had not been protecting him from danger. They had been deciding what danger he was allowed to see. He picked up Sofia's notebook from the desk where he had placed it earlier. He turned to the first page. A child's simple observations. Dates, times, small changes. Things everyone else ignored. At the bottom of the page was one sentence written in Sofia's handwriting. He doesn't look sick. He looks like someone wants him to believe he is. Alessandro closed his eyes for a moment. Because the hardest truth was not that someone had betrayed him. The hardest truth was that a 9-year-old girl had noticed the betrayal long before he did. Alessandro Moretti closed Sofia Bellini's notebook and placed it beside the contract that had been designed to take control of his life. For years, he had believed power meant knowing everything before anyone else. Now he understood something different. Power also meant knowing when to stay silent, when to wait, when to let someone reveal themselves. The next morning, Alessandro woke up and acted exactly as Vittorio Romano expected him to act. He moved slower. He paused before answering questions. He allowed his hand to rest against the desk for a second longer than necessary. The performance was subtle, not weakness, just enough uncertainty to make someone believe they were winning. Victoria noticed immediately. She walked into his office carrying a folder and a concerned expression. "You should really consider taking some time away," she said softly. "Your health matters." Alessandro looked at her with tired eyes. "Maybe you're right." The words were simple, almost too simple.
Victoria smiled.
"I only want what is best for you." Alessandro lowered his gaze to the folder. "Do you?" For a brief moment, the smile disappeared. Then it returned. "Of course." He let the silence sit between them. He had spent his life making people nervous with threats. Now he was learning that silence could be more powerful. That afternoon, Alessandro prepared a small test. He told Victoria he needed to review an important route map connected to a shipping agreement. The map was placed on his desk inside a sealed envelope with a broken wax mark. The information inside was not real. It was a controlled piece of information created only for one purpose: to see who would try to move it. His security team quietly monitored the room. No one was told except his attorney and consigliera. Even Sofia was not involved in the dangerous part. Alessandro had learned one important thing. A child should not have to stand between powerful adults and their lies. Sofia's role was different. She noticed what adults ignored. Nothing more. Later that evening, Sofia was helping Elena in the kitchen when she noticed something unusual. The old wall clock near the pantry was 7 minutes behind. She frowned. "Mom, did someone change the clock?" Elena looked confused. "Why?" Sofia pointed. "Because Mr. Moretti's office clock and this one are usually the same." It was a small detail, almost meaningless. But Alessandro had asked her earlier one question. "If something changes, what do you notice first?" She answered honestly, "Things that don't belong." Alessandro checked the clock records. The kitchen clock had been adjusted that afternoon. The same afternoon Victoria visited his office. He did not accuse anyone. He simply added the information to the growing pattern. That night, the sealed envelope moved. Not far. Only from the center of the desk to the left side. But it moved. The camera recorded it. Alessandro watched the footage alone in his office. The person who entered wore gloves. The face was hidden. But the reflection in the glass cabinet showed enough. The person stopped near the envelope. They did not open it. They only checked the seal. Then they sent a message from their phone. Alessandro waited until the person left before reviewing the message record. It was not the content that mattered first. It was the timing. The phone connected to the mansion network at the exact moment Victoria was supposed to be attending a charity meeting across town. The next morning, Alessandro invited Victoria, his attorney, and his assistant into the office. The sealed envelope sat on the desk, untouched. Victoria glanced at it. "Did something happen?" she asked. Alessandro looked at her calmly. "I was hoping you could tell me." The room became still.
Victoria laughed softly.
"I have no idea what you mean." Alessandro opened the file in front of him. "Interesting." He turned the screen toward her. "Because yesterday you told me you were across town." Victoria looked at the screen, then back at him. "I was."
Alessandro nodded slowly.
"Then explain why your phone connected to my private office network." For the first time, Victoria did not answer immediately. It was only 1 second, but Alessandro saw it. The hesitation, the calculation, the moment she realized the room had changed. She left the office with the same perfect posture she always carried. But before the door closed, Her eyes moved toward the security camera in the corner. She had finally understood something. The little people were working very hard. Nobody moved. Alessandro placed a folder on the table. Inside were copies of the security footage, the medicine records, the delivery receipts, and the financial trail connecting the hidden company to Victoria's accounts. His attorney distributed the documents one by one. The room grew quieter with every page. Victoria looked through them carefully. "These are accusations based on assumptions," she said. "Where is the proof that I personally did anything?" Alessandro did not answer immediately. He reached for a small device beside the folder. "Sophia," he said. The door opened slowly. Sophia Bellini stepped inside holding her notebook. Elena stood behind her, nervous but protective. The room changed instantly. Some people looked confused. Some looked uncomfortable. A few looked at Sophia the same way they always had, like she did not belong there.
Alessandro noticed.
He had noticed too late before. Not today. Sophia walked to the table and placed her notebook beside the evidence. Believing her position mattered more than her truth. The room went completely silent. Victoria looked toward the lawyers, searching for someone who would challenge him. No one did. The original contract was placed in front of Alessandro. The altered medical reports were beside it. The delivery records, the camera evidence. The chain was complete. Victoria had spent months creating a story where Alessandro would slowly disappear from his own life. But now the entire room saw the truth. Alessandro picked up the contract, looked at the signature page one last time, and placed it back on the table. His expression did not show anger, only disappointment. He removed his glasses, folded them carefully, and looked at his attorney. "Call my attorney," he said quietly. Then he corrected himself after a brief pause.
No.
"Call the authorities who handle financial fraud and medical misconduct. This ends properly." The days after the meeting were quieter than anyone expected. There were no dramatic celebrations inside the Moretti mansion. No loud speeches. No public display of revenge. Alessandro Moretti had spent his entire life surrounded by people who believed power meant making others afraid. But this time he wanted something different. He wanted the truth to remain standing after the anger disappeared. The investigation moved through the proper channels. Victoria Romano was removed from every position connected to Moretti family finances. The accounts linked to the hidden company were frozen while investigators reviewed the transfers. Her legal team could not explain the altered medical records, the unauthorized payments, or the security evidence showing the manipulation inside Alessandro's own home. The private doctor lost his position immediately and faced professional review for falsifying medical information. The contract designed to transfer control of Alessandro's affairs was declared invalid after the evidence showed how the process had been manipulated. Victoria had tried to make Alessandro disappear quietly. Instead, her own paperwork created the record that exposed her. Weeks later, Alessandro stood in the same conference room where Sophia Bellini had first been treated like someone who did not belong. This time, the room was different. Elena stood beside her daughter. The legal team stood nearby. The family advisors were present. But no one looked at Sophia as a servant's child anymore. Alessandro placed a document on the table. It was a formal statement recognizing Elena Bellini's years of service, correcting previous employment records, and establishing protections for household employees, better pay, legal support, clear reporting procedures, no more invisible workers. "This should have existed before," Alessandro said. Elena looked down, emotional but composed. "Thank you, sir." Alessandro shook his head.
No.
"Thank you for raising someone who was brave enough to tell the truth when everyone else was afraid to hear it." Sophia stood quietly beside her mother. She did not ask for anything. She never had. That was what stayed with Alessandro the most. She had never wanted a reward. She wanted someone to listen. The black crystal glass with the gold rim was kept as evidence until the investigation was complete. Every record was preserved. Every timestamp was documented. Every piece of the chain was secured. When the case was officially closed, Alessandro returned the glass to his office. But he did not place it near his desk. He placed it inside a clear display case on a shelf where he could see it every day. Not as a reminder of betrayal, as a reminder of the person who noticed what everyone else ignored. The mansion changed slowly after that. Not because Alessandro became a different man overnight. He was still careful, still quiet, still someone whose name carried weight. But now, when employees spoke, he listened before making decisions. When someone brought a concern, he did not ask who they were. He asked what they had seen. One evening, rain tapped softly against the kitchen window. Elena prepared dinner while Sophia sat at the table finishing homework. The room was simple, warm. Nothing like the cold marble halls where powerful people made decisions. Alessandro entered carrying a small package. Sophia looked up. "Is that another test?" she asked. For the first time in a long time, Alessandro almost smiled. No, he placed the package on the table. Inside was a new notebook. The cover was blue, like the color of Sophia's old hair clip. "For what?" she asked. Alessandro looked at the empty pages. "For anything you notice." Sophia smiled slightly. "Even if people don't want to hear it?" Alessandro was quiet for a moment. Then he answered honestly. "Especially then." Later that night, the Moretti mansion was quiet. The lights in the kitchen remained on. A glass of milk sat beside Sophia's notebook. Elena's coat hung by the door. And in Alessandro's office, behind glass, sat the old crystal cup that had almost taken away his future. The smallest person in the room had saved the most powerful one. Not with money, not with influence, with a truth that finally had someone willing to hear it.